Hi everybody, welcome to Steve's Garage. If you missed the intro, this series of videos is about building out my small garage with a reasonable budget. If that sounds interesting to you, please subscribe, there'll be plenty more videos. As for this episode, I cover the history or all the work I've done to get it to where it is right now. The previous owners had done a lot of work that didn't quite suit what I wanted the garage for, and so there was a lot of undoing that. Hope you enjoy this video, thanks so much for watching. Here it is the day we moved in. It's a single garage door leading into a small single bay to park a car with a small square section you see off to the left. I assume it used to be a two-car garage, but the previous owners decided they wanted a laundry room instead, so that's the area you see here. I also assume the garage wasn't parked in, at least not regularly, because as you'll see throughout the video, there's a lot of storage that would make that pretty difficult. I realize I don't have any photos or videos of what the left side originally looked like, so we'll start there. Along the back wall you can see the outline of what used to be a shelving unit. That was the first thing to go since the spacing of the shelves and the shallow depth made them absolutely useless for me. You can also catch a glimpse of the overhead storage and the weird AC unit that the previous owners added to a room inside the house despite the house having central air. Now I'm going to move to the back wall because I realize I also don't have many photos of that. There was this box hanging on the wall, I guess you could call it a cabinet, but there weren't any shelves or hooks in it, so I'm not really sure what it was used for. I put brooms in it for a little while, but ultimately decided I need that space to be able to get around a car if it was parked in the garage. And now for the long exterior wall, which was the largest undertaking, but ultimately made the biggest difference in space. There was this heater that had been plumbed into the natural gas line of the house, but it was disconnected when they built out the laundry room. As cool looking as it is, I'm sure it's wildly inefficient by today's standards, and even if I did hook up a gas line, the thing itself didn't turn on, even though it had power run to it. It just felt like too many problems to try to fix and troubleshoot to not even know what the outcome would be. I just thought it best to remove it. Next up was tearing out the workbench and those storage closets. I thought about keeping it and trying to make it work, but it's ultimately in the wrong place if you want to park a car and have a workbench at the same time. I think it had been painted about 10,000 times so the drawers didn't slide that well. It had that very typical old garage musty smell, and I just prefer to store my tools in a proper toolbox. Upon pulling it out, I realized why it and the whole garage smelled old and musty, and that's because there was years of water damage behind it. I did this just trying to pull this board off the wall with my pry bar. And this, you can just almost put your finger through it. You can see the whole wall is like... Oh. Yay! Oh boy. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to go into the details of repairing a load-bearing wall. It was definitely something new for me, but I must have done something right because the house and garage are still standing. And that pretty much brings us to where we are today. You can see I've got a light installed on the wall here, kind of like a detail shop, but it works great for working on this side of the car. It's a long, low-mounted light, and so it throws a lot of light out. It's also really great for working inside the car. I can roll the windows down or open the doors, and I've got plenty of light to see what I'm doing inside the car. Back here, I've got an exhaust fan. I really installed it to fill the hole left from the heater. I've got a 70-year-old brick home. There's no way I'm going to match that. So I installed that as just kind of a filler. It does work, I have used it on occasion, but it's not something I would have if I didn't need to. The last thing I want to do is cover some of the unique features of this garage. We've all got them. Hard stop items that you're not going to change unless you increase your budget massively, and at that point you just build what you want. Those things. Number one, outlets. When we moved in, they were all two-prong outlets in the garage, which are not only useless nowadays, but also technically against code in the garage. I did replace all of them. It wasn't exactly cheap, but when it comes to electrical outlets in the garage, it's not really something I wanted to mess around with. Obviously, swapping outlets isn't a huge deal. The main problem is that my panel is maxed out, so what I've got is what I'm stuck with. Of course I could upgrade my panel, but that's an expensive option just to add some outlets for convenience sake. Number two, lighting. And I think that that's a complaint that everyone has unless you design and build a shop yourself. When we moved in, there were two overhead lights. One was operated by the switch by the door, the other was operated by a switch over that workbench, and it was a single tube fluorescent. I don't know how anyone saw anything going on in here. Going back to problem one of the outlets, I only have a couple outlets, they're all in random places, but I do have one on the ceiling for the garage door opener. So I could tap into that, and I could use those plug-in daisy chain LED lights that you see for sale everywhere. They've honestly worked great for me. For those interested, I'll go into more detail about the lighting in my next video. The third and final item is the ceiling. On the bay side of the garage, it slopes downward and ends just shy of 7 feet on the outside wall. The cove detailing is great, but I would just rather have overhead room. There's so little clearance, in fact, that the previous owners had to cut into the ceiling when they installed the garage door. That's their handiwork. not mine. At the end of the day, it's a function of how the house is built, so it is what it is, but it would be nice to have some more overhead storage besides the small space above me here. And that's a wrap on episode 1. If you have any questions about the work that I did, feel free to leave a comment. I'm no contractor, but I can try to help you out. In episode 2, I'm going to start covering how I built out the space. I'm real excited for that because I think I've made a pretty good use of this space, and I'm excited to share it with other people who may find it useful as well. Thanks so much for watching, everybody.